All right, everyone. Now we're not going to try to put lipstick on a pig here, but Beijing Biden is the quickest failure of any modern U.S. president. Now, you might be surprised at why I say modern president, because he's an abysmal failure by any estimation. If he were in the 1800s, well, that was back when he was younger, so maybe he wouldn't have failed as much. I kid. He's not quite that old. He's more like FDR era. If you put him in any era of the United States, even like the Reconstruction period or something when there's a lot of crazy shit happening, he'd be considered corrupt and inept. We have stagflation. We have the cancellation of Keystone XL, while Biden rescinds actually Trump-era sanctions on Russia, who's the Russian agent here, with regards to their Nord Stream 2 pipeline. It's like the Russians are allowed to sell gas to the Europeans. The Canadians are not allowed to get gas to the United States. That would cause climate change. That's the other thing. He's failing on that and stabbing the left and other people in the back at the same time while putting forth a tax code, the biggest marker in which is the restoration of the limitless salt deduction, which would actually just help a bunch of rich people. So he's an abysmal failure. Look at Korea. Look at relations in Afghanistan. Israel, Gaza, it's not directly attributed to any policy from Biden, with the exception of all that other money he was giving to Hamas, essentially. See, the problem is, and I say this as someone who doesn't really care who wins in the region, because everybody loses if there's any civilization there at all, because there will always be war, saying that if you do cut one side or the other off from payments, well, they no longer have an incentive to bomb things because they know they're not going to get a payoff. Well, Trump did succeed there. It's a little bit of a Pyrrhic victory, I suppose, at some point. It's not long-lasting or anything, so we won't get too hot under the collar about Biden being a failure on that, too. The reason that I say just modern presidents is because you can look back and find some really, a couple presidents weren't really in there very long. Like you get a McKinley or something, and some of them were just sort of fill-ins like Fillmore. And then you get maybe a Buchanan or something. You get some people that are definitely unsavory. But Biden has managed to do more damage, make more problems, make more mistakes in a few short months than most of them did in multiple-year presidencies. He's quickly approaching the level at which we'll be able to say he's been the worst, most disastrous president in U.S. history. With COVID, keep in mind, technically speaking, the evidence is beginning to seep in, and it's not coincidental this comes in after the election, of course. Let's not pretend to be surprised about that one. All of a sudden, we're finding out that, Obama administration may kind of sort of have been involved in planning and preparation in Wuhan directly attributed to pathogenic research of an unsavory character. The kind of pathogenic research that if you have let's say a lab leak, because someone decides to sell one of the infected bats or whatever on a wet market, you can cause a catastrophic loss of life. It's beginning to look a lot like that's what happened. Although we don't have proof, there is at least evidence, there's speculation now that we know it came from Wuhan. That's, I think, beyond debate at this point. Did it come from the lab? Well, if I put two together and look at where the lab is, it's at least sensible. I'm going to follow Occam's razor, as all of the many leftists out there are so fond of saying, and just assume that there was a lab leak, because it makes sense. Well, the Obama administration was responsible in part for setting that lab up along with its protocol. Obama was there along with Fauci, actually, at the time, many years ago. Fauci, who kept talking about modifying viruses and bacteria as though it was a good thing. And who was VP at the time? Oh, that's right. It's the dude who claimed that it couldn't have possibly come from China, and it was xenophobic to say so. No, this is Cuomo called it the European virus. Biden started calling it the Trump virus. Trump, meanwhile, saying, hey, I've got intel, literal intel, that it came from the Wuhan lab. Everyone didn't believe him until a couple of days ago. What hasn't Biden ruined? At least among things he's decided to do anything about. What hasn't he fucked up? Can I please ask that question? Is there one solid example of something that Biden did, other than the hyper-partisan side of things, that would be considered a general success? Now, here's the problem. In order for us to consider him a success, according to his own hyperbolic sloganeering during the primaries, he's a uniter. He wanted to come in and as opposed to Trump, who is splitting people apart, making people angry and hate each other with slimy tweets and gesundheit and all of these other horrible things, Biden said, come on, man. He wanted to be a warm sweater. Gesundheit again. Maybe you've got the coof. Terrible. See, the China virus has come here. It's affecting us all, and Biden's doing little about it. Instead of that, he wanted to be the uniter. He didn't want to make mean tweets. He didn't want to he didn't want to challenge any more people to push-up contests, maybe. He wanted to be the uniting president. Where the fuck is the unity? Holy Christ. The only thing unifying people is bemusement every time that he fucks up. Like the other day when he was at that thing, and there was the daughter of a dead soldier or something there, or a dead Capitol policeman, and he was saying creepy things about this little girl, and it's like, Joe, just do what all of the liberals are telling you to do and sit it out. Go into the basement and do things silently. Don't even make public appearances. Let Psaki handle it all. She'll always just circle around and nobody will dare to say anything because they're afraid of getting called sexist. His approval was being buoyed by his absence. When he didn't do anything, there was nothing you could complain about. This is kind of similar to the Kasich effect. You'll remember that, and I analyzed it at the time in the 2016 election. Kasich's big selling point initially was, hey, I do the best against Hillary Clinton in poll matchups. But that's because you didn't do anything. Nobody knew anything about you. You can't attack ideologically someone if you don't know anything about them. The only thing holding you back at that point is what party you're a member of. Well, if you compare generic Republican that could be everything you want versus people you actually know something about, of course that person will do the best in a matchup. He was like at 47-47 fairly early on, and he probably would have done a reasonably good job, but he would have lost against Hillary in the end. Let's face it, I think Trump was one of only two people that were capable of winning along with Rand Paul. And of course, he never gained any traction. But the Kasich effect was essentially the idea that you didn't know anything about him, so you couldn't really oppose him. You may not be a supporter unless you're an ideological partisan, which means you're a Democrat. Biden has like 90% support among Dems, just as Trump did 90% support among Republicans. In Biden's case, it's much more soft support, I would hazard a guess. But that being said, then Biden came out, and he just couldn't help himself. He couldn't help doing the egotistical strongman imperial president thing that he has clearly wanted to do now for multiple decades. He just couldn't help himself. He wants so badly to contrast himself with Obama because he's already been there. He played second fiddle, and I'm sure that this pisses him off because he's a bigot. He had to play second fiddle to a black dude that's about 25 years younger than he was. Well, that pisses him off, so he wants to show that he's got the same balls, the same chutzpah that Obama had. The problem is he waited so long he's got goddamn dementia. So he's not good at messaging simply because of the way that he speaks, to the point where they have to pretend he had a stutter. Show me this stutter acting up in the 70s, 80s, or 90s. Please do that. Find some footage of that stutter that supposedly over time he'd learned to suppress actually better, I would assume. Well, it doesn't seem to be there. I've watched hours of Biden speaking in Congress. By the way, if you ever want to have an exciting time, don't do that. Watch paint dry or something instead. Trust me. Depending on the species, it can be a real great show compared to anything Biden's going to give you. He's failed at everything. He's fucked up literally everything. The economy is being more fucked now than it was under Trump. And this is post-COVID. Trump had managed to reign over an economy that had mostly recovered. Now unemployment ticks back up. And now you have Biden saying, oh yeah, I want to spend trillions and trillions of dollars on what? Infrastructure, they call it. Well, that can mean anything. I keep hearing that universal pre-K is now considered infrastructure by Nancy Pelosi. Elizabeth Warren thinks that buying more box wine is infrastructure. Marco Rubio thinks that shoes with lifts in them are infrastructure. In his case, at least, it adds some verticality. It helps him reach the higher shelves at the store because he's a little derp. Okay, it's infrastructure, right? Let's throw that in there. The cat thinks that its morning snack is infrastructure. The term has been watered down so much over the last few months, it's like the term racist. What do you mean? You told an off-color joke that someone retroactively finds offensive 35 years ago? Like Paula Deen? Oh, you must be a racist. See, it doesn't have any fucking meaning. The messaging is all over the place. By the way, Biden's handlers are not strategic geniuses. Their entire long-term power play appears to be to rely upon the legacy media not to do eventually, and it'll take them time, but eventually what they are trained to do, which is actually report on what Biden's doing. The problem is, when it becomes clear there's no redeeming features to his presidency, they can only make so many stories about his favorite ice cream before the wheels start falling off that ideological propagandistic bus. Eventually, they will be forced by the nature of clickbait, especially on the internet as it is today anyway, to report negatively on Joe Biden. Eventually, they're going to do that, and his popularity is going to crater. They'll probably do him a solid. They'll give him a reach around while fucking him in the ass and wait till after the midterms. After that, it's no holds barred because they know he ain't running again. I'm sorry, when Biden says, well, yeah, I'll probably run for a second term, no, you won't. You inserted the probably in there for a reason, as plausible deniability. Guaranteed that won't happen. And what's he gonna do? Come out in a wheelchair? Oh, now I'm really like FDR. That'd go over really fucking well. That's about all. Peace out.